We'd like to start the press conference by Minister Motegi. Minister, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I do not have opening statements. We'd like to take your questions. Please raise your hand. If you're designated, please come to this standing microphone and state your name and affiliation. So who would like to start? Oishi-san, please. Oishi from TV Asahi. I would like to ask about the trade negotiations between the UK. Seeking to enact the agreement from January next year, I understand that you are ongoing with the negotiations. What is the status of the negotiation? So according to report, I understand that you may meet Secretary of Trust and visit the UK yourself. Can you talk about this current situation, please? Thank you. Between Japan and the United Kingdom, in order to ensure smooth continuation of the business, it is important that we create a new framework for trade and investment between Japan and the United Kingdom that can be in place of Japan-EU EPA. And we have to bear in mind that end of the transition period of the United Kingdom after the withdrawal from the EU will come to an end of this year, which means that we have to begin winding down the negotiation. In the case of trade negotiation between Japan and the United States, it was the beginning of this January. Between Mr. Reithauser and myself, we reached an agreement on August 23rd. That was the date of the final agreement. And in the beginning of the April, we had reached a situation where we were close to an agreement. So considering the schedule, I think that might be I think that is one schedule that we can consider. So that means that a very large number of pages will be involved, and the agreement is likely to be quite voluminous. Again, we have to enter the final stages of the negotiation going forward as far as the schedule of those negotiations are concerned and how we will do that. On that point, between ourselves and the United Kingdom, we are in the midst of adjustment. Thank you.
Any other questions?
News preparations are underway to launch the Hope probe to Mars in cooperation with Mitsubishi Corporation and with the support, I think, by the Japanese government and United Arab Emirates government. This is really a very important step toward Mars, toward the planet exploration, cooperation between Japan and Arab country. What is the position and the statement by the Japanese government on this cooperation? Thank you.
Now, concerning from the rocket launch from Tanegashima Space Center, I have visited there before, and if you look there, it's very impressive. It's like in the Shitamachi Rocket TV drama. The Teikoku Juko is the company. The Mitsubishi Heavy is a model for that company. So together with Mitsubishi Heavy and Tsukuda Seisakusho, the collaboration between these two companies. So that was confirmed due to the launch of the rocket. So due to our H2A rocket, UAE's Mars probe, Hope, will be launched. So that is a very important project that symbolizes a very important, strong relationship between Japan and UAE. And due to bad weather, we understand that the schedule is currently being adjusted, but I do hope that the launch will be a success. And Japan and UAE has been promoting a cooperation in a wide range of areas. Based on the comprehensive strategic partnership initiative between the two countries, we hope to continue to promote cooperation in various areas, including space.
Next question, please. Makino from Senkyo.com. Last week, I know that you have responded to your questions about the removal of children from Japan. Now, in that resolution, not only cases that are subject to the Hague Convention, but also with regard to removal of children and refusal of visits related to international marriages between a person from EU member country and a Japanese. The resolution points out that this represents violation of the Convention of the Rights of a Child. And I understand that if Japan does not respond, I understand that in the resolution they call for the review of the Japan-EU strategic partnership. Does Japan believe that you are complying with the CRC Convention on the Rights of the Child? And also, depending on how you respond to this European Parliament's resolution, this could have impact on the SPA. How do you intend to respond as a diplomatic issue? Thank you. For cases that occur in Japan but are not subject to the Hague Convention, the government of Japan has responded in a fair and just manner, and we believe that we are in compliance with the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child. With regard to the details, might I suggest that you turn your inquiries to the Minister of Justice, which is the competent authority. They are the competent authority. In any event, Japan is appropriately implementing the Hague Convention, and we believe that we're faithfully complying with the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child. Thank you.
Watanabe-san, please. Watanabe from NHK speaking. Yesterday, the Go-To campaign, Tokyo will be excluded from Tokyo campaign that was announced, and currently in Japan, as part of the cross-border measures against COVID-19. So I think the direction is to relax the restrictions on business travel, and that is progressing this week as well. And within the such negotiations with other countries, what do you think will be the impact on what has been happening this week in Japan? Now, Go-To campaign and the resumption of travel cannot be treated at the same level. So how Go-To campaign is going to be implemented, the Cabinet Secretariat as well as MLIT, they are responsible and they will be promoting that. And there was an announcement yesterday. And concerning the domestic situation, if you look at the domestic economy, due to request to stay home, there has been a major drop in the Japanese economy. So from April to May, that was when the economy bottomed. At the time of Lehman shock, until it hit bottom, it took GDP went to about 7.1%, so 35 trillion yen. This time it was 6.5%. GDP is bigger, so same magnitude of negative effects are seen. Of course, we need to prevent the spread of infection thoroughly, but at the same time, we will need to revive the economy. That is extremely important. And the issue this time is, well, last time we saw at the time of Lehman shock, the advanced countries were negative, but the emerging countries, the developing countries, were positive. So IMF, the world outlook at that time in terms of the world economy, it was negative 0.1%, world economic outlook, and currently it's negative 4.9%. So not only the industrialized countries, but the developing countries and the emerging countries as well. This problem originated in China, and at the forefront of infection spread is Brazil, India, and these countries. So bearing that in mind, we have been depending on external demand. However, it will be very difficult to revive the economy based on that. So how can we trigger domestic demand as well as to recover economic activity? The last time the drop was mainly due to the manufacturing sector, but this time would be restaurants, food service, and hotels, events. To various industries, the impact is spread. So this has to be recovered, to be reactivated. In order to do so, inclusive of Go-To campaign, various measures will be required. But as you know, as you see in the name of Go-To campaign, terrorism and travel of ordinary people. This project is to support that. And currently, concerning the resumption of international travel, as we have mentioned already, first we would like to start with business people. The start of travel between business people, and considering the countries very limited: Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand. With these four countries will be the target. And going forward, we would like to spread this to students, international students, as well as tourists, so that this can be spread to ordinary citizens in the future. And in terms of the countries where the infection spread is stabilizing, phase by phase, we would like to spread and expand the scope of countries. That is the direction. So in terms of the approach of resuming international travel and go-to campaign cannot be thought of in the same way.
Next question, Watanabe-san. Thank you, Minister. On a related note, if I may ask, Minister, maybe I was not very forthcoming in my question. The go-to campaign itself had to be reviewed partially, which means that Tokyo-centric situation in Japan is in a very severe state when it comes to the state of infection. And what impact will this have in terms of your negotiation with foreign countries? That was the gist of my question. And also, tomorrow it will be 1 month after the relaxation of the situation. It's been 1 month. It's been 1 month since you showed your policy that you will begin to relax some of the restrictions. So can you talk about the outlook going forward? And the partial review of the go-to campaign represents that there is a very grave situation here in Japan domestically. So the state of the spread of infection, how this will affect your negotiations? That was the gist of my question. Thank you. Well, in terms of the go-to campaign, inclusive of the go-to campaign, what is the state of the infection here in Japan? That is not part of my purview of this office, so I would like to refrain from responding to that question. But when we take a look at the state of the infection on a global basis, roughly 13 million cases have been recorded, which means that we see a spread on a global basis, and the pace is also accelerating. And the confirmed cases, it took 67 days to reach 100,000. And from 100,000 to 200,000, it took 11 days. And from 200,000 cases to 300,000 cases, it only took 4 days, just 4 days. But now, within 4 days, we're beginning to see increase by as much as 1 million cases. So that being the case, the spread of the infection on a global basis continues. So depending on the country, you see tens of thousands of confirmed cases. And such situation continues in certain countries. In various countries, they are taking measures to wind down the spread of the infection. Here in Japan as well, based on such measures, Japan would like to render assistance and cooperation where possible. But when you take a look at the situation of the global situation of the infection in a very objective manner, what is the situation in Japan compared to the situation here in Japan? I believe the response and the outcome is very clear based on that comparison.
Are there any other questions? Ishinobu from Sankei, thank you. Now I'd like to ask about the travel of VIPs. So I think before COVID, you have been carrying out important negotiations face-to-face. However, now with the spread of COVID-19, you're using TV or phone conferences. But face-to-face meetings and TV or video or telephone conferences, depending on the negotiations, what are the differences between face-to-face and web? There are various travel restrictions. So there are cases when we will not be able to select the best method. That is true not only for Japan, but for other countries as well. And also, same for the foreign ministers and the leaders in other countries as well. And currently in the international society, there are various issues inclusive of COVID-19. And we are discussing and cooperating closely. That is necessary. So that is why we use telephone conferences as well as video conferences. So that that is how we have been communicating. And we have more than 60 telephone conferences with the foreign ministers of each of various countries. So there are cases when we don't have to travel for 10 hours just for the meeting, so we will be able to save time. That is one aspect. But if it is a very difficult negotiation, for example, like the U.S.-Japan trade negotiations, whether or not we can negotiate by phone with Mr. Reitheiser, that is not possible. There are very sensitive issues, and also sometimes we need to spend about 2 days, 3 days for negotiations. For such negotiations, to meet them directly, to talk directly, inclusive of the working level, and ultimately to have one-on-one meetings, even without interpreter, may be necessary. So from that perspective, we, in very important settings, face-to-face meetings will still be required in some negotiations.
Next question, please. Makino from Senkyo.com. I'd like to go back to the previous question. In relation to the resolution passed by the European Parliament, the Parliament has said that Japan is in violation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But the Japanese side, you're saying that there are no problems and that you're complying with the Convention of Rights of the Child. That should be a matter not just left to the Ministry of Justice, inclusive of the Ministry of Justice. Shouldn't the Japanese government and the Prime Minister's office have they signed off on the position that you just alluded to? I mentioned that we're faithfully and sincerely implementing the convention. With regard to the substance, if you find that there are some issues that you feel needs to be pointed out in terms of the implementation, then please direct your question to the Ministry of Justice, because they are the competent authority. That was the gist of my response. So if you have questions about the implementation, you need to direct your questions to the Ministry of Justice. This is the domestic law. And it is the Ministry of Justice that is responsible for the actual implementation of the law. So you should direct your question to the Ministry of Justice. Thank you. Well, so the Ministry of Justice, sorry. Can you please return to your seat and wait to be designated once again?
Any other questions? Watanabe-san, please. NHK, Watanabe speaking. Now, considering relaxation of the immigration, so not only Vietnam but Thailand, can you explain about the negotiation with Thailand? And at this point in time, when do you think you will allow travel between Japan and Thailand? So the negotiations are progressing very smoothly, so not in it too far future. But of course, there is the counterparty countries, and we do have to finalize the negotiations. And at the same time, between the two countries, let's say we agree on this scheme, we have to have actually people traveling, or else it will not constitute travel. So the possibility of traveling when the timing was, with that in mind, we would like to expedite the negotiations. It would not be too far into the future. Thank you very much. We'd like to close. Thank you. We'd like to conclude.